Well, hello, everybody. It's great to be back. And yes, I have my voice back. So last week, as you saw in my note out to everybody, I got a bit of laryngitis, had a pipsqueak voice, as one of my friends called it. It was a little bit, it was a little tough to talk, all but a whisper. So thank you so much for your patience. I'm glad you're joining me today. And I'm super excited for today's session. It is the recap. We are coming to the conclusion of this second series in our BPM certification. So we had our BPM certification 1. All of that content now, we've got that online. Everything's packaged up. If you participated in that session, if you're interested in getting your certificate, please let me know. Just send me an email. I'll have my email at the end of this session. You've also got it on the screen here. You can shoot me a quick email. Let me know that you were in on Cert Level 1 and that you'd like your certification. We'll get that out to you, your certificate. Also today, we're wrapping up our certification Level 2. And so this level has been a deep dive into the various components that are really critical for us in building a holistic and sustainable solution for our BPM and ultimately the underpinnings of creating a continuous improvement culture, right? So today we're going to do a recap. I'm going to distill out some of the key lessons, key points that we went through over the course of the last several weeks and put a nice bow on all of it. And then next week, we are starting up with the next in our series. And that segment will be focused around actually building an internal continuous improvement organization. If it's PMO, so an organization that's really focused around process and process optimization for the whole business, or if it's even a segment of an existing function. So, for example, sometimes that leadership for process optimization and the culture that ensues, sometimes that resides inside of the charter of our IT organizations, for example, or human resources. So in our next series, we're going to do a deep dive around how to actually establish an organization like that. Even if it's a team of one, these are still going to be important aspects to put in place. So I invite you to continue on, and we'll move into Level 3. All right, so let's go ahead and put a bow on Level 2. Here we go. So what we have been focused on over the last several weeks is really looking at the framework that organizations that are focused around process improvement, framework that can be used to really manage and lay out your game plan, if you will, for your PI efforts and the alignment to your strategic objectives, right? So we've been looking at that framework, and we'll do a review of those components here as we go through this morning. We also took a look at different methods that are used around process improvement, Kaizen, for example, Lean Six Sigma, elements like that, and the importance of, at the end of the day, really being able to incorporate agility into all the facets of your organization's performance, individual performance, team performance, organizational performance, financial performance, operational performance, all of those elements, right? So we did a deep dive around those pieces. Now, one of the things that I do want you to take away is the importance of being able to just step back for a moment, or take a few moments to look at the architecture, what a solid, sustainable infrastructure looks like, and then do periodic assessments for your team and for your organization. How well are you doing on each one of the elements that go into making up that whole solution? Okay? So continuous improvement and process improvement is by definition a continual improvement, right? It is one of those things that we're always coming back to, and we're assessing how are we doing? Where are we going next? How are we moving? How is the market shaping around us? How is the environment shifting? How are we positioned to that? So many of you know, as we've done work together in the past around perhaps it's your process improvement initiatives or in the human resources world, performance management, for example, it truly is an environment where we're continually measuring and discussing what kind of progress are we making and what's shifting, what's adjusting. Okay, so that's what we want to focus on for today. All right, so let's take a look here, and we'll just take a quick look at what our discussion path looks like, so you can get a handle on this and know where our path will go today. All right, so we are going to be focused around actually zeroing in on those highlights. I've got 6 key takeaways, if you will, that I want you to be able to really put these in your pocket, have them handy, know that you'll be able to use them and reference them as you're going forward. Right? So we've got 6 key topics we're going to focus in around, or takeaways, if you will. All right. And then, of course, as usual, we'll have an open Q&A session. So that'll be an opportunity if you've got any questions. And certainly if you've got any questions along the way, just drop them into the chat function, and I will keep an eye on that as well, so we keep ourselves tracking. Okay? All right, so first, key takeaway number 1, you want to establish a structure and understand the influences related to that structure. Okay? So as described by the arrows here, we want to make sure we have a framework that describes the rationale of how the organization actually captures and creates value for its customers, how it delivers that value. So we want to make sure we've got that framework, and it's a framework that's logically tied into the business and helps to articulate how the business, teams, individuals really differentiate themselves in that context. Now, this is where we also brought in the aspect of the environmental influences, right? So we have external driving forces and internal driving forces that will always be affecting our program. They will always be affecting the way that we are operating as an organization. All right. So as we think about in particular, as your organization has evolved into, or is evolving into, as maybe your vision, evolving into an organization that is empowered, that is a lean culture, that is committed to process standardization and optimization. From that standpoint, you know that you will have external driving forces that may be holding back the organization or maybe pushing the organization forward, as well as internal driving forces, right? So if you want to dive deeper into that, you can go back a couple of sessions prior and do a deep dive into what those specific components and examples of those forces actually are. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at key takeaway number 2. So key takeaway number 2 here, where we focused is on establishing what we could consider a super system map, okay? So, this is like that mega overview. It's a high-level snapshot. Those of you who know me know that I enjoy using altitude. I'm a private pilot, so I enjoy using altitude as an analogy for this. And our super system maps would probably be at that 30,000 level, 30,000 foot level, right? So the components now that you see here, though, are the key to what makes this map important and valuable for us. And so in some respects, again, this becomes a piece that you're able to reference back to. It is a pictorial map. I have an example I'm going to share with you here in a second of a system map, a super system map, so you can kind of get your arms around what the intention is behind this. So it is a pictorial map. It gives that overall kind of relationship map, if you will, right? So within the environment that the organization is operating, and remember again, we use organization here to mean team or functional area or the entire business, right? So within that context, whatever that business environment is, there's 6 components that you always want to make sure are included in your system map, your super system map, that big picture, okay? And those components are organization. So how is the organization established? What are the characteristics of it? For example, the core values, the operating principles, the vision, the mission, those components. Who are the customers? Who is the end result, the end recipient of the work that the organization does? Who are those customers? Who are the suppliers, of course, feeding into the organization and the process. Who are the competitors? This often gets missed, right? Who are the competitors? These are part of the external forces that will absolutely heavily influence the way work gets done, and also may cause distraction in very subtle ways where it can leak energy from your organization with those distractions. So you want to be cognizant of, to the best of your ability, who are the competitors, both those explicit as well as implicit. So there may be competitors that are out there that maybe don't quite live in your precise space, but they actually are a competitor in the way that they may distract clients from you. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. And then, of course, the environmental influences that are affecting the organization. And lastly, and equally important, the stakeholders and the shareholders. So stakeholders include everyone from employees to vendors and suppliers, or even stakeholders in an organization. They want your success because that equates to their success, as well as, if you're a publicly traded organization, shareholders. Again, a very, very important element. So how do you capture all of this, right? So I mentioned I'd share an example with you. This is one that's very similar to some of the work that we do in working with our teams. And this is an example of one of those super system overview maps. So it gives that element of, an example taken from the tech space, from Nokia's perspective, okay? So Nokia being right in the center, and you can see the influencers, the suppliers, the technologies, the services, the channels, what's coming in terms of competitors, new entrants into the market, even substitutes. Like I mentioned, sometimes competitors or competition is not a direct competitor. So you can see at the top of the screen here, new entrants into the market, Google, Intel, Apple, et cetera, and their impact on Nokia. Those are very obvious competitors. However, some of the more subtle competitors are the substitutes, right? So notebooks, mobile internet devices, and so on, right? So you can get a sense from this illustration here, and if you want to grab a snapshot of it, go for it. This is one piece of work that often our clients will ask us to come in, spend a day together, and help the organization really vet this out and facilitate the conversation and create an illustration just like this one, or, well, obviously specific for you, that captures all of this in one spot. And you can get the sense and the power of having this kind of picture, whether it's for your team. So HR teams often love doing this piece for themselves because they have also internal and external competitors, a la the recruiting space, for example. They also have very interested stakeholders, and they have suppliers and channels. So all of it applies even at the team level. All right. So this is one piece of work. I love doing this with teams. It is one of those that I think it adds so much value and can be captured in such a relatively short period of time. Key takeaway number 3. So the third element is that the components, we know that we have a complete and sustainable program when all of the components are in place for creating this BPM and CI culture, okay? So let's do a recap of what those components are, so you can really get this locked in. And again, be another opportunity to take a screenshot of this one as well, so you can keep it handy with you. So let's just roll through this one real quick here as a reminder of what we're looking at. So the components of this, we know that we start with those environmental factors, your organizational influencers. And so that's where you can see the super system map is a great benefit to have when you're getting started, and also a phenomenal benefit to have if your program is well established and underway and you want to do a litmus test, right, of all of the factors influencing. So the environmental factors and the influencers, this is absolutely one of the most important elements to understand. Now, what's interesting, recall that many organizations and many teams, right, we want to jump right to the end, right? Give me the answer, and then we'll run off and we'll go do it, and then we think that has solved our problem, right? What gets missed, and this is where you participating in this series, really as a student and a master, becoming a master of what a solid program entails and how powerful it can be. What gets missed are these elements that will be right in the heart here. So for example, taking the time to profile the organization. You remember that? I mean, that was several weeks ago that we talked about profiling the organization. What are the characteristics of it? Does it tend to be more of a top-down, command and control, collaborative, matrixed organization? You know, what does it tend to be, right? So profiling that inside of that context, getting a really solid handle on, do we have the leadership in place for this? What does that leadership look like? And how do we leverage that leadership to affect change, right? And then linking to the strategic plan. So ensuring that there's a plan in play, even if it's not formally structured, that there is a strategy that's being played out, and that your BPM is designed to reinforce that strategy and also to be pulled forward by that strategy. That strategy acts as the why in many cases, right? So from that standpoint, then we get into kind of the nitty-gritty and executional elements, if you will. So recall, we did a deep dive around these three pieces: process management, performance management, and workforce management. So in all three of these components, it's very, I guess I would call it programmatic, right? So we've got a design, we have an intention around it, we have a methodology that we use for managing our processes, we have a framework in place, we methodically go through and we check where we're at, we measure, we realign, we adjust, we implement, we check, we measure, realign, adjust, implement, check, right? So in all three of these pieces, there's a very strong programmatic component here. All right. So we want to make sure that these are solidly in place, and that we're actually just methodically like a lighthouse, right? And the light going around very methodically. We know it's going to come around. We know we've got a plan. We know we've got a process. We know we've got a structure. Okay. So you want to make sure that these are solidly in place and that they are all absolutely aligned to that big why, to the creation of a continuous improvement culture and your BPM, right? So this is where the, what's the other analogy, where the rubber hits the road, right? In these pieces here. We then wrapped up these two components here. We wrapped up around quality management and just a short period ago, knowledge management. Remember, in the space of knowledge management, I think that may be one of the most exciting areas around BPM, because the BPM in and of itself, well designed, becomes that brain trust for your organization. I mean, how cool is that, right? You've put this program effectively in place for managing your business processes, your structure, and your methodology. But in reality, what you've created is a very deep knowledge management solution, and designed around making sure that the information and the knowledge, whether it's the explicit knowledge of the organization, the words and the data and those elements, right? The explicit knowledge, the stuff that can easily be transmitted through electronic means, online means, for example, as well as mechanisms in place for capturing and disseminating and sharing the tacit knowledge, the knowledge that and the implicit knowledge is just unique to your culture, that all of that knowledge is being captured and held and disseminated out to the parties that need to know it, when they need to know it, in the time that they need to know it, right? So there is incredible juice around this. And so take your snapshot here, grab this piece. This is the one that I would strongly recommend in terms of your capstone for this segment, for the certification level 2, that you take this and you use this as your measurement. How are we doing on each one of these, and periodically track and measure against these. Okay. All right. So we know that there are interrelations in all of those as well. And that's kind of the juiciness, I like to say. Okay. All right. Takeaway number 4, let's roll through this. So takeaway number 4, I want to do that little deep dive around the strategic planning and the process management. Okay. So ensuring we've really locked in now again around our strategic planning, that, we have a process in place for defining the strategy. And again, even if that strategy is, if it's codified, that's great. If it's known and widely disseminated by larger portions of the organization, that's fantastic. If it is that it's more tightly held, that's fine. What you're going after is that there's a strategy in place that includes capital and people. And then process management. So now we layer in the process management piece, right? And I think we're all tight and tidy on this one. You know, we know the definition around this, and we recognize that it really is about planning and engineering, improving and monitoring the organization's processes, right? So we get all of that dialed in. Now, we also have the mechanisms for making this happen, right? And this is where we introduced elements such as Lean Six Sigma and Rumler-Brock. So again, if you want to do a deeper dive into those techniques, go back a few sessions, do a dive around that, and that will help bring you to a really nice, deep understanding of the different methods. And also, I guess I would say, you know, when it's best to use the different methods and different approaches. Okay, so now let's go ahead and hop on to the next one here. Key takeaway number 5. So key takeaway number 5 here is we want to make sure that we understand the core or the purpose of process improvement. So very few organizations will embark on this journey simply for the sake of documenting processes. Done well, they will embark on this journey to document processes with the intention of either helping to educate and inform, and or a way to be able to capture that tribal knowledge. You know, if somebody wins the lottery, for example, tomorrow, and they decide to go to Tahiti and not come back, how are we going to fill the gap, right? So many organizations will embark on this path for those types of reasons. And in addition to that, being able to now, by virtue of having that visibility into the processes, to actually take those now and start to even codify them, improve them, and codify them. So improvement initiatives are all based on that solid foundation of process capture. And the codification, or what I'm referring to here, is more from the standpoint of workflow development, workflow automation, or even RPA initiatives. So, you know, if you want to do a deeper dive around workflow automation and RPA, definitely let me know. There's so much great stuff that's emerging here. And all organizations, I think, have the opportunity at relatively low cost, actually, to start automating much of their workflow and much of the stuff that's done in the RPA world. So from this standpoint, what we want to know is, and keep in mind, is that the core purpose of our process improvement, we're going to find most of those principles inside of what we referred to as the Agile Manifesto. Okay, so when we're looking at the Agile Manifesto, we're really drilling in around developing this ongoing practice of ascertaining how well or even how poorly our processes and the organization as a result is actually performing, right? So this becomes the core and purpose of process improvement, to really know how well are we doing, and what are we doing well, and what can we replicate, and what are we not doing so well, and where can we improve it, and focusing on driving to a customer experience. So many teams, when they go into process improvement, they also look for those smart solutions, I call it, right? They'll apply techniques like the 5 whys, for example, to really get to the root cause. So as a recap for you, the 5 whys, again, if you're not familiar with those, the 5 whys have to do with when you see an issue, to be asking the question, well, why does that happen? And then when you get that answer, ask, well, why does that happen? When you get that answer, then ask again, why does that happen? And so you're drilling down to get to root cause. And it's a very, very intelligent approach that often results in smart solutions. So this is really what the core and purpose is of process improvement, is around performance management. And we always want to keep that in front of our sights. So from this standpoint also, we know that to be sustainable in our organizations, our focus is around org excellence and world-class client and employee experiences, right? That's ultimately what ends up being delivered when you dedicate the resources and the intention around process improvement and continuous improvement. Okay, so we want to be focused around that, keeping in mind, again, that is the big why. Key takeaway number 6, kind of bring it home here. So key takeaway number 6 lives in the world of workforce quality and knowledge management. It lives in that world. So here, our takeaways are that workforce management is really around our systems for developing and assessing the engagement of the workforce. Do they have the skills? Are they motivated? Do we have the right people in the right roles? Are they resourced effectively? Do they have access to the knowledge? How do we make sure that they get the access to the resources that they need? That's what lives in the world of workforce management, right? The second component, remember, these are all the baseline elements that we looked at when we were looking at our whole solution, right? So the second element is around quality management. And I want to emphasize here that it's about the measurement of excellence. How cool is that, right? So what you're going after here is, in the space of quality management, you really want to be measuring excellence, right? What does excellence look like? And are we achieving it? And are we satisfied with what we're getting? And remember, the context changes continually, right? So we're measuring excellence here. And one way of thinking about it is that it's also the state of being free from deficiencies or significant variations against whatever the requirements are, the stated requirements are, right? So from that perspective, we bring in our third final pillar in this space around knowledge management. And I've already shared a little bit today about why I'm passionate in the world of knowledge management. I think this is the juice. I think that it's the glue. And I think it is absolutely the way that organizations are differentiating themselves today and will be well into the future, is in the world of knowledge management. All right. So all of this, I would say, is the basis of integrity for the organization. And by integrity, what we're going after here, and this philosophy of without integrity, nothing truly works. What we're going after here is that when we've stated clearly what our intended outcome is, and we've got our process dialed in to achieve it, when we execute flawlessly against that process, we will get the outcome that we fully expect. All right. So that's what we're going after here. Recap all of it. I would love to leave you with this one piece here. Leverage, leverage, leverage best practices so that you can accelerate your process improvement, your business improvement, and your continuous improvement programs and initiatives. All right. So leverage, leverage, leverage as much as you can. There's some great stuff out there. I think that, again, there's some great content we've shared in this session. I encourage you to take full advantage of it. Go back, take a look at any of the prior sessions. Please feel free to do that. And if you've got any questions at all, let me just take a quick peek, see if we've got anything that's come across. All right. So no specific questions for today. That's all fine and dandy. If anything comes up, if there's anything here you want to grab a snapshot of, or you just want to dig into it a little bit deeper, please, just reach out to me. You know how to get in touch with me. 415-328-3200, direct phone line, my email address, of course. And if you just want to schedule right onto my calendar, here's my process. You can click right on this, go to meetme.so, and Diana Willis at Pendolino Group. You can just click right on that URL, and guess what? Process works seamlessly. You'll be able to just hop right onto my calendar. I'm really looking forward to connecting up with you. Thank you so much for joining us. This brings a wrap to our level 2 certification. And so if you've been with us through the whole session, again, or the whole series rather, again, please do just reach out to me. Let's touch bases, and we're going to get that certificate into your hands as well. So you can hang that on your wall, add it to your resume, become part of the community. Looking forward to connecting again. We'll be kicking off our next series next week, and that's where we're going to dive into how to actually build an organization, a team, even if it's a team of one, how to actually build a process improvement organization. All right, an organization that's chartered at the heart of your business, that's chartered to bring this fantastic influence into the organization, adjust and shift and grow the culture and create magnificence. Have a wonderful day. I look forward to connecting up with you next week, and we'll talk very soon. Bye-bye now.